There's no arguing that Led Zeppelin is one of the best rock bands of all time, but there was once a time when critics believed differently. Today we'll discuss the early critical reception of Led Zeppelin and how they exceeded expectations with one of their best albums. If you're interested in hearing how, please keep on watching.
Who do they think they are? To be so pompous. And we weren't being pompous. We did come from the land of the ice and snow.
In my opinion, not only was the early critical reception for Led Zeppelin befuddling, but their overall success could not be quantified in how they appealed to critics. What mattered was how audiences responded. As we've previously highlighted on the channel, perhaps the most celebrated drummer in all of rock history is John Bonham, creating a style all his own, meshing differing cultures to deliver a drumming technique that was thunderous and all-encompassing. Borrowing much of his technique from jazz musician Joe Morello, Bonham exceeded the expectations set forth by many drummers. In my opinion, Bonham was able to adapt his playing technique to varying degrees. We can hear this on songs like Fool in the Rain, The Wonton Song, and Good Times, Bad Times. Bonham's impeccable taste for the drum sounds, rather than hearing the individual parts. He reveled in the sounds of Motown and the groove of funk. When crafting his technique, Bonham believed experimentation was a big component of his musicality. In a 1973 interview, Bonham revealed, "There have been times when I've blundered and got the dreaded look from the lads, but that's a good sign. It shows you're attempting something you've not tried before." The late drummer relied on the heavy usage of bass drums, working in combination with his Ludwig drum kits. The organic sounds of Led Zeppelin can never be duplicated or rather mimicked, because of Bonham's commitment to pushing boundaries for the rules of drumming. He combined his influences and improved the enormity of the band because of it. Understanding the early critical reception for Led Zeppelin is crucial in why we revere Bonham's style today. Being a young writer for his university newspaper at UCLA, a 21-year-old writer, John Mendelsohn, was less than enthused when it came to the musical stylings of Led Zeppelin. Mendelsohn launched a full-fledged critique on the band because he believed they did not resonate with him. Mendelsohn did not appreciate the band, nor did he feel they were anything to write home about. At the time, Mendelsohn believed Jimmy Page's guitar style to be antiquated and Robert Plant's vocal style to be dull. By 1972, Led Zeppelin's critical reception began to change, in least part because critics began to warm up to the resounding message from their positioning amongst other offerings in rock music. Led Zeppelin had a loyal fan base that understood their music and warmly received artistry which spoke to them. Despite critics bemoaning their very existence, the band proved they were immovable. Obviously, Led Zeppelin IV has been cited as one of the best things the band ever did, but we never talk about why. The album was different from their other endeavors, allowing themselves the freedom of experimentation with different styles of culture and music. And those efforts were not futile. At the time, Led Zeppelin IV, the album debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200 chart, resulting in over 37 million records sold. Critic reception was the most positive it had ever been. The reason that this worked was because of the heavy influence of rock, blues, and folk music. For instance, Going to California was heavily inspired by Joni Mitchell's 1968 song, I Had a King, specifically with John Paul Jones playing the mandolin and acoustic guitar by Jimmy Page. Led Zeppelin IV will go untitled due to a suggestion from Page. In an interview with Rolling Stone Mag, he said, "After all we had accomplished, the press was still calling us a hype, so that is why the fourth album was untitled." Page believed this album would speak for itself, so having no title spoke volumes. In this way, the album would perhaps be more musically digestible to critics, rather than the superficiality of some others. When listening to the album, the distinct sound of each track transports the listener to a different destination. For example, the timeless influence of the architect of rock music, Little Richard, lent much of his brash and raucous vocal style to rock and roll. It became all the more clear that Zeppelin's plan was to transition to the foundations of rock music. With Healey Grange being one of the production locations, it made it easier for the guys to further the sensibilities of rock and roll with uniqueness that will be remembered forever. As journalist Jack Hamilton states, Led Zeppelin lifted popular music to new heights of opulence and ambition, and in doing so, made people fear for its future. LZ4 is the escape of 60 anxieties and a calmness that overtakes the largest quandaries of musicianship. Zeppelin IV was a rebuttal to critics who believed the band were faddish. Led Zeppelin proved to be starting out on a journey to prove critics wrong and literally wear their influences on their sleeve. While their modern influence is all the more palpable when we talk about Greta Van Fleet, the White Stripes or Royal Blood, for instance, I won't bore you with the details of the Yardbirds and how they ultimately became Led Zeppelin, because we spoke about that in another video which I'll link down in the description box below. Much of this album continuously evoked the incomparable talent of American blues singers like Muddy Waters and Howlin' Wolf. I've often thought that in the same way that the Stones tried to be the sons of Chuck Berry, we tried to be the sons of Howlin' Wolf, remarked Page on one occasion. Much of what you hear on Stairway to Heaven is the insulated quality of Zeppelin's environment that overtook the melodies and harmonies of their music. As it is known today, Stairway to Heaven was written with the purest of intentions, which is why it has remained a staple in music. When we travel back in time to Led Zeppelin's permanent reign, we see the appeal of the band. In 1971, Lenny Kaye wrote, "Basing themselves around one honey of a chord progression, the group constructs an air of tunnel-long depth, full of stunning resolves and a majesty that sets up as a perfect climax." Led Zeppelin IV was a profoundly different work from the band's previous projects. In their own way, they set out to conquer the music world and truly prove that they were a force to be reckoned with. Led Zeppelin were not content on being coy and passive. No, they strived to create a masterpiece that truly ingratiated the listener to consider the impossible. In their own way, the band cultivated their own sound, fusing different chords, progressions, and styles that transcended prior musings. If we are to ever see a band of their stature again, it should be said that Led Zeppelin will never be duplicated. Their work is far too innovative, enormous, and rich to ever be copied. Thank you for watching. If you like what you heard today, please consider subscribing. My name is Maya, and I make decent music commentary videos that cover classic rock and other varying genres. See you very soon. Don't forget to check the description box to watch our last video. Bye.